Blog Talk Radio. Blog Talk Radio.
America Meditating Blog Talk Radio Show. We collect wisdom, hear stories, and inspire each other. I'm Sister Jenna. Tune in live from Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Do you like to meditate? Have you tried to meditate? Have you struggled with meditation? Why don't you visit one of the Brahma Kumaris Meditation Center? Visit brahmakumaris.org.
The entire world watched.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And humanity saw that the sky was not the limit. Achievement. Pass it on from the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com.
Inner light. Taking just a minute, I relax my body and become aware of my inner light. I visualize each one of my thoughts weaving itself into this light. I draw from my heart the power of inner peace and the light of love. My thoughts are filled with compassion and forgiveness, patience and tolerance. Welcome, everyone, to America Meditating Radio Show. I'm your host, Sister Jenna. We're broadcasting from the Meditation Oasis in McLean, Virginia today. I checked in the land of spirituality. The soul was still attached to the body. And so whatever was happening outside in the world, sometimes the soul would also pick up the energies of that or the vibrations. If you get an idea, we're all like somehow picking up, letting off, picking up, letting off each other's thought vibrations. And the question comes to my mind over and over again, who really am I, and am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Because so many influences have a way of entering the doorway of the five senses, which then gets somewhere connected to the soul. Many of us talk about the brain, many of us talk about the body, many of us talk about neurons and pathways, and some of us talk about soul, some of us talk about thoughts. But at the end of it all, aren't we all human beings going through experiences? Today we're going to have the privilege of talking to Dr. Richard-Davidson about a little bit more on, the whole aspect of neuroscience and also how our brains function and some brain-breaking work on emotions in our brain. And we're going to look forward to getting him on the air in just a minute or so. But before we do, we want to go to Sister Gita and find out what she has for us in her reading. Sister Gita?
It's such a delight to be on your show, Sister Jenna. And I'm reading from the book An Angel Whispered by Patricia Toshiro. Of course, this book can be obtained from any Brahma Kumari Center or Amazon. And the topic I chose, there's a reason for that, is how can I be happy when life seems to be so unfair? But how can I be happy when life is so unfair? When others do wrong, it's more than I can bear. I know you may think what they did is a shame, and now you feel miserable as they are to blame, says the angel. But let me tell you a secret that is really true. The way that you feel is solely because of you. You had a thought they should act a certain way, but they did something different, and you had no say. So who is to blame for your taking sorrow? And who is at fault when you seek revenge tomorrow? Is it the other who didn't do as you pleased? Or is it you whose thoughts were diseased? The other's capacity you fail to consider. This was the problem. This made you bitter. So when you feel you're starting to sink, stop and ask yourself, what did I just think? What did I expect that the other failed to do? But don't examine the other. Please, just look at you. In one way or another, your thoughts were faulty. This was the problem. This made your tears salty. Please, wisen up. Have a great day. The pursuit of happiness is why we're here. Thank you. Om Shanti.
Thank you very much, Sister Gita. It's very timely. I love that book, actually. It's one of my favorite. We've been even commissioned in our Constitution, the pursuit of happiness. And is it something that we pursue? Is it something that we're born with? I came across a quote by the Dalai Lama. And of course, as you know, he's so wise. Happiness is not something ready-made. It comes from your own actions. Thought that was interesting. And be happy with what you have and are. Be generous with both, and you won't have to hunt for happiness. By William Gladstone. I don't know if it's all about happiness or if it's about existing in a good way and being cognizant of your strengths and also of your limitations. Today we have Dr. Richard-J-Davidson, who's a renowned neuroscientist and professor of psychology and psychiatry at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, as well as the founder and chair of the Center for Investigating Healthy Minds at the Waisman Center and director for brain imaging and behavior in the Laboratory for Affective Neuroscience. He has published more than 275 articles, many chapters and reviews, and edited over 14 books. He is the author of The Emotional Life of Your Brain and is best known for his groundbreaking work in studying emotion and the brain. A friend and confidant of the Dalai Lama, he is highly sought-after expert and speaker internationally. He's been featured in popular media, including Oprah magazine, PBS, Charlie Rose, named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in 2006, one of my favorite reads in Time. And he is also the recipient of numerous awards. Dr. Davidson has dedicated himself to applying this hopeful discovery to improve the lives of people throughout the world. Today we welcome Dr. Davidson to the America Meditating Radio Show with great honor. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
No, I'm glad that you could make it. I know you have quite an extensive background in the field of psychology. What was it that got you interested in this area and in studying the connection between modern neuroscience and contemplative practices? Because I think it's such a missing component. One of the things that I heard when I was much younger, if someone sometimes is emotionally or mentally not well, sometimes the last thing you want them to do is some sort of a contemplative practice because they would see too much of what's going on in the mind. And here you're basically marrying psychology, neuroscience, contemplative practice, and I feel it's very beneficial for people's lives. But I'd love to know more about how you got involved.
Well, I got involved initially because I personally tasted the benefits of these kinds of practices early on in my career when I was a graduate student and recognized that these were methods that can have considerable value in helping to transform the mind in ways that may be beneficial. William James in 1890 in his his classic book, The Principles of Psychology, said that the faculty of voluntarily bringing back a wandering attention over and over again is the very root of judgment, character, and will. And he then went on to say that an education which should improve this faculty would be the education par excellence. But at that time, James really had no contact with the contemplative traditions, particularly from the East, which feature practices that can, I believe, improve the regulation of attention as well as the regulation of emotion. And when I first encountered these, I clearly recognized their relevance to what William James was describing and their potential benefit. But it really took a few decades before the zeitgeist in scientific areas changed and was sufficiently open to doing work in this area, and also methods needed to be developed that can provide sensitive measures of the mind and the brain that can potentially capture the transformations that may be occurring. And so it really wasn't until, I would say, around the mid-1990s that serious research in this area began.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Now, I know that you maintain a daily meditation practice. What are some of the things that you experience, not just when you're meditating, but as a result of your meditation practice?
Well, your question, I think, the way you phrased it is important, because what really is most beneficial about these kinds of practices is what they do for us off the cushion. If they just produced some experience while you're on the cushion, it would be like a drug. Then it wears off, and what's the point? The point of this is really to transform everyday life. And I would say for myself, it certainly has had huge amounts of benefit. By most objective measures, I think most people would regard the kind of life I lead as very stressful. In the middle of a very competitive academic environment, I'm quite busy, I travel a lot, and I find that I'm able to do this and still feel very refreshed and nourished. And I attribute at least some of that to my daily practice. I think if I didn't have my daily practice, it would be far more difficult and more stressful for me.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine that. And the reason why I coined the question that way is because, and I can only maybe stereotype this, and maybe I might get in trouble with all my listeners, but I believe that many of us in America consider the fix of meditation when you are sitting on the cushion. And I believe the fix of meditation is what you actually do when you're off of it. And what is that consciousness that you maintain whilst in motion from, I feel, when you're sitting in that contemplation practice, it's confirmation. But then something happens after that when you're in motion. And that's why I really thought it was really important, and I appreciated the response that you just offered. I know that you're involved with the Center for Investigating Healthy Minds, which is a very beautiful title, by the way. Could you tell us a little bit more about the center and its mission?
Sure. The mission of the center is to relieve suffering and cultivate well-being through science. And we have three major prongs in our center. One is the conduct of basic research. This is basic research on the nature of suffering and how it can be alleviated. And we do basic studies on the impact of meditation, different kinds of meditation on the brain and biology and on the mind, as well as the influence of, for example, stressful life events and how they impact the mind and the brain and how they can be reversed through the kinds of practices that we're talking about. The second major prong is what we call translational research, where we take the insights that we've gleaned from the laboratory and try to bring them out into the real world, in real-world context, but do it in the context of also collecting data and doing research. And so, for example, we've developed a kindness curriculum for preschool children that we're implementing in public schools here in Madison, Wisconsin. and evaluating the impact of this curriculum on the development of children. We're working with kids at other grade levels as well, using contemplative-based interventions that are taught in a secular way to cultivate healthy habits of mind, kindness, compassion, and emotional balance. And we are using modern scientific methods to evaluate their impact on measures of attention, on emotion regulation, as well as on academic performance and on classroom behavior. So that's one example of translational research. Another example is practices in the workplace. We are developing simple curricula that are comprised of short practices that are meant to be done while one is at work. Just short periods of practice that can be sprinkled throughout the day. And we're doing this in various kinds of workplace settings, including corporations, and using web-based tools that we're developing to evaluate their impact. So that's the second prong of the center, this translational research effort. And the third prong is dissemination, where we are trying to change the cultural meme around this idea that well-being and happiness should best be regarded as skills. That is, these are qualities that actually can be learned. And we believe that this is something hugely important because once more people understand and appreciate that these are qualities that can be learned, then I think that people will be more likely to engage in practices that can actually help to cultivate these qualities. And it's kind of like physical exercise and physical health. Most people in the West now understand that physical exercise is something that can be beneficial for physical health, and so they engage in these physical exercise practices to benefit their physical health. And in the same way, I think we will see this occur for mental exercise of the sort that we're talking about as a greater percentage of the population appreciates and understands this notion that well-being actually can be learned.
Wow, that's fantastic. Can we move on to this wonderful documentary film, Free the Mind, profiles your work and findings that it's possible to rewire the brain. And I believe this, rewire the brain, I call it in spiritual terminology, transforming vices into virtues in the soul, because I'm only going to rewire myself because something's not working. And at some point, all of our vices are just destroying all of our happiness and peace of mind and kindness and self-respect and self-worth. We can only get so angry and so arrogant and so lustful and so attached till it reaches a point that it says, I can't do any more of you, you know? And so when we're looking at rewiring the brain, which I believe is a physical component, but the soul sits in the brain, yet because the energy of light has become so attached to the matter, now the brain functions based on whatever the soul goes through. So I do believe that we can definitely find a lot of answers through this process. So in the film, Free the Mind, which profiled your work on rewiring the brain through meditation and mental training exercises, could you tell our listeners about your studies and findings in this area, and how do meditative practices influence pain and human suffering?
Well, the film Free the Mind is a documentary that was made by a Danish filmmaker, and it profiles some of the translational research efforts that are ongoing in our center, and it specifically profiles two major projects. One is the work with the kindness curriculum in preschool children that I alluded to earlier, and the second is work with returning veterans who are suffering from post-traumatic stress syndromes. And in each case, we have investigated the application of secular contemplative-based strategies to cultivate healthier habits of mind. And in these two very different projects, the filmmaker, I think, does a brilliant job of presenting them and uncovering their unifying themes and also does it in the context of our commitment to engage in serious scientific research, where we find that these practices indeed can lead to fundamental changes in the function and structure of the brain. And it is through those changes that the enduring impact and transformation of these practices can be put into effect. So with regard to your question about pain per se, we actually have done quite a bit of research on the impact of contemplative practices on pain, and I can say just very briefly that there is a really enormous impact in that area, and I think this is one of the areas where there's a lot of clinical significance, particularly for those individuals who are suffering from chronic kinds of medical conditions that are associated with pain. Right. One of the main things that we've learned is that a lot of the suffering that occurs with pain is due to the anticipation, that is the worrying about the pain and kind of the after effects of the pain, and not so much to the actual pain itself. It's all of the kind of psychological drama around the pain which activates emotional circuits in the brain and creates a huge amount of suffering. We did an experiment with very long-term meditation practitioners and novice controls where we presented a cue to them that informed them that in about 10 seconds they were going to receive a very painful stimulus, and we use heat in the laboratory, and it's very realistic. It's a burning sensation, but we can deliver it in a very safe way. And what we find is that if you take a person off the street who has not done any kind of mental training and you give them an experience of what this painful stimulus feels like, and then you present a tone, for example, to them, and you tell them when they receive that tone, they know that in 10 seconds they're going to get zapped with this painful stimulus. What happens is as soon as they receive the tone without the pain, the networks in their brain that are associated with the pain begin to activate because they're not in the moment. They're worrying about the upcoming pain. And it turns out that the activation of those networks before the actual painful stimulus is delivered is what accounts for most of the suffering that people report. In long-term meditation practitioners, they don't show that. They don't show that anticipatory activity. They show a response to the painful stimulus itself, but they show almost no change during that cue when the tone is presented because there's nothing happening. And so by training the mind to live more in the present moment, we can radically transform our experience of pain.
Well, that's great. That's great to know. Now, you've basically popularized the idea that one can learn happiness and compassion as skills just as one learns to play a musical instrument or train in golf or tennis. How is it possible?
Well, one of the things we've come to understand is that well-being and happiness, emotional qualities which really are fundamentally no different than other kinds of skill domains. And we also know that the circuits in the brain that are important for these qualities are plastic in the same way that the circuits in the brain that are important for learning to play a musical instrument are plastic. And if we practice, if we engage in mental training to enhance these qualities, it leads to systematic changes in these circuits in the brain in fundamentally the same way that practicing a musical instrument leads to changes in the corresponding parts of the brain that are important for music. And so this is really an extremely important insight because it suggests that if we practice at these kinds of skills, we will get better just like in these other domains.
That's nice. That's nice to know, because a lot of people might feel that happiness and compassion are really just innate abilities of the human spirit based on karmas. And yes, I guess in some way, if you do train yourself to just keep looking at the brighter side of things, it's much better than taking on the negative. I think in addition, though, the importance of training myself to look at the brighter side of things, but also being very realistic that I did do something. It did create a lower energy. I need to be mindful. I need to make sure I don't keep repeating these practices, or these behaviors.
Right. Well, that's part of training to be happy as well, is recognizing what can interfere with happiness and learning to change our behavior in ways that promote happiness and decrease suffering.
Right. I'm very kind of enthused to raise this next question to you because it's a big one on my radar all the time. There's a lot of discussion about the idea of consciousness. Doctor, what's your definition of consciousness, one, and how does it manifest in the brain and body and affect our external world?
Well, consciousness is a very complicated and difficult topic, and it's treated in many different ways in the scientific community. Most neuroscientists would argue that consciousness is a quality of experience, and many people would define consciousness as a quality of awareness that allows us to report on our own experience. Consciousness also varies across the day, and the nature of consciousness when we're sleeping, for example, is different from the nature of consciousness when we're awake. And those differences are associated with measurable differences in the brain. But I also should hasten to add that although the scientific community is now studying consciousness with vigor, we're still in the very early stages of this work. We're really in our infancy, and what we don't know far exceeds what we do know.
What always fascinates me, our world seems to be waiting for science to prove that the energy of soul and the energy of spirit or light really exist, and that thought energy is actually creating a lot of what we see in the world today. And I'm just baffled because of just the comment you made, and it was beautiful. Please know that. At the speed of how science has been moving using the 5 elements, in what way can the speed of science really amplify the subtle, the invisible, the spirit, the thought? And I'm somehow reminded of Stephen Hawking and how he only has his finger and his eyes, I think, that moves maybe the most. And yet he's able to communicate using this computer. Mm-hmm. And, even though something in his soul basically is not able to work all of his body parts, there are just basically 2 pieces, and yet here science and spirituality have created a marriage, and we get to witness what we do with the life of Stephen Hawking and the work that he's been doing and shifting humanity. And so I so appreciate the work that you're doing because it is important to bridge this gap, and it's so timely. And with individuals like you at the helm, I know we'll continue to move the story forward, which is really vital. I really appreciated the wisdom that you brought to the table. Was there anything that we missed that you would love our listeners to know about that Dr. Davidson's working on? And please let us know what your favorite life quote is that you're living by currently.
Well, I think we've covered all of the highlights, and one of the quotes that I look at every day is from Shanti Deva, which says, "For as long as space endures and as long as living beings remain, until then, may I too abide to dispel the misery of the world."
Nice. Beautiful. Love that. Dr. Davidson, thank you so much. Is there a website that we can get a hold of you?
Yes, investigatinghealthyminds.org.
Beautiful. Thank you so very much, and let us know in whatever way we can help to participate in the work that you're doing, and if there's any way that we can spread the message of the work that you're doing, don't hesitate to just let us know so we can let the world know about it.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. All the very best. Take care.
To you too. Bye-bye.
Bye. So here we've got a beautiful scientist working on the realm of consciousness, and as I said earlier on in our discussion with Dr. Davidson, when science and spirituality actually marry each other, what will be the acceleration of our story, and how would the whole story of spirituality really take that high step forward? I think it'll be huge if we actually did that together. You've been listening to the America Meditating Radio Show. We had Dr. Davidson on the air. Feel free, if you want to keep hearing the show over and over again, to download our Pause for Peace app, or go to any of our outlets, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, or even on to the meditationmuseum.org website. I'm not quite sure if you're aware, but there are quite a lot of wonderful articles on the Huffington Post, which I have the fortune of blogging regularly with. So feel free to sign up, become a fan, hear a little bit more about what's happening in the world, put in some more positivity into your consciousness, and allow life to unfold beautifully as you know it is meant to do. We thank you for joining us. Wishing you all the best. I'm going to end the show with Holy, Holy by Agape. And remember, no one can take away your happiness unless you give them permission. And we're learning to love each other the same. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.